We're live.
Woo! Welcome to Alien Theorists Theorizing. This is a special edition. This is a review, a breakdown of the Congressional UFO hearing that happened earlier today. Obviously, this is the first Congressional hearing in 50 years. So,
Of UFO.
Like 66?
Yeah, it's
something like that.
Excitement around the UFO community. Socials were buzzing with all this news, and we're going to talk about everything that went down. Now, I know we briefly talked about it last night in the case file. I think I went into it with, I pretty much lowered my expectations because I truly thought it was going to be we can't talk about that. We can confirm nor deny.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to thought. I literally, that's what I thought was going to happen. It was just going to be this big procedural bullshit, and everyone was going to leave less interested in UFOs than they ever have been in the past. And it exceeded my expectations. It was actually a really interesting. This committee that formed, the members seem genuinely interested in taking these things seriously. One of the things that took, that kind of stuck with me is I forget his name. And
Good.
He opened it.
Good start.
He opened the committee, and he's saying that, like, these things happen often and frequent. And he goes, we need to start taking them more seriously, and we need to make systems in place so people don't feel the need, like, aren't embarrassed to report them, and there's not this like fear to report them, which has been happening. I really loved the opening with that. I thought it was really interesting. What do you guys think of it?
Well, it goes with this quote from Ronald Moultrie, I think is his name.
He's a beauty.
Top Pentagon intelligence official says, through rigorous analysis, most, but not all, UAPs can be identified. And that's what we're looking for. Not all of them. Some they're like, yeah, that's a drone, that's a meteor, that's a satellite, that's a China lantern. But there's a few that are like, we don't know what they are. And you're like, that's what we got to look into.
Well, and then there was an interesting bit too where another guy was saying, like, he's like, I would love, he's like, I like aliens and stuff as much as the next guy, but like, I think this is important because we've, people have been embarrassed to report these things, and there's been such a stigma against UAPs and UFOs that he goes, even if these aren't like extraterrestrial tech, this could be technology from Russia and China that we have no understanding of, and we've been too embarrassed to even look at it. So we need to take all these things seriously because,
national security, baby.
National security, which I really liked, because by doing that, it's like by taking these things seriously and allowing pilots and stuff to report these things, and without fear of being grounded or ridiculed and stuff, maybe we will find out that a lot of this tech is tech that we've never seen before from other adversarial countries. But there's always a chance that there's going to be the ones where they're like, we don't know.
Well,
right?
You can tell that they're taking it seriously because, like, last year, they had 143 reports, and now they're up to fucking 400.
Yeah, right. Since they've implemented a lot of the protocols that they said that they were gonna. The very first thing they said last year was like they were going to stream. Actually, that was before even the last one before they actually legislated this into existence. I think the Office of the Navy of the United States Navy had already started streamlining protocols to open up the doors for the pilot, like especially pilots. Not just pilots, but ground crew and everybody else too, but military reporting for these kinds of events.
Yeah. I mean, like, why would we not want these reports? Like, this should be a safe place. This isn't World War II. Nobody's fucking cracking amphetamines and going for flights, right? Or at least we hope they're not.
Yeah. It's one of those deals that it's like, yeah, they've observed these objects or these events, this phenomenon that have been happening. They said that they've had at least they said like 18 specific events where they were near misses with 18 is the number that comes to my head. I might be wrong, but that they had pilots, flying, and they said, I think they said most of these events occurred like over like training areas, and they were talking about non-training areas as well. But they were saying they had at least these reports of these like seemingly, physical objects that had nearly missed these things. So yeah, by making it a security issue and also a safety of our our United States military members' safety, like it destigmatizes this, being like, look, this is a safety thing. Like we're not getting like,
we want to document and organize your accounts, so don't be afraid to at least make a report about it.
Right. So I mean, they talked a little bit about like the at least one of the Congress members was kind of cool when he asked him. He's like, I used to be a Navy pilot. He brought his experience onto the table, and he's like, so I just landed, I saw something. What am I going to do? What does that reporting process look like? And they kind of laid it out, like what the initial stages was essentially is like, okay, during a part of your regular debriefing now is going to be like, we're going to bring on the ship's intelligence officer, and they're going to bring in and come in and talk to you. And then they have like they probably have a new form to like fill out.
They don't just come equipped with like UAP whistles. Whenever they run into something, they just start blowing the whistle.
Not yet. That might be a change that they said. They specifically mentioned that I think they were pretty quick to mention that the current name of it, what is it? It's the Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group, or AIMSOG, is what they're using.
That's awesome. Well done.
Well, they said they're going to change.
I don't trust it.
They said the name is going to change. Yeah, they said the name is going to change. They said they're like, we're pretty sure that name's going to change once they get everything kind of going.
Yeah, they're like, our acronym guy wasn't here before we started.
We just had to go with what came to mind.
Anything with AIM in it gives me bad vibes.
Now, the other thing that he said along that lines of Dan is that, like, these fighter pilots, and they train the same way they fight, and so some of these encounters are with these UAPs entering these restricted training spaces where they shouldn't be, right? Like, kind of to your point, where it's like it causes safety issues, right? Where it's like, if these things are coming in where we're, our pilots are training, one, they don't respond, they exceed our technologies, it's a cause for concern, 100%.
Right.
Yep.
One interesting comment is they did ask about one of the Congress members asked, like, the question is like, have we tried communicating with these objects, which I thought was kind of fun.
Good question.
He was like, it's a good question. He's like, have we tried communicating with them? And part of me is like, yeah, that's a good idea to try and communicate them. But I'm also like, you're flying at Mach 2 and you're trying to like
wave.
Like a wave,
Hey.
it's like Top Gun, keeping up international relations.
44.
Did you flip it the bird? And I thought that was interesting because that did bring up the point where they were talking about how some of these objects, they said that they had detected radio RF, like RF emanations from some of these objects.
They're transmitting radio signals.
Indicating that they didn't really say to what extent or to how those that RF emanations were interpreted. That might be just something that they did in the closed session. Specifically what we're talking about right now is the open session, which is the declassified stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then immediately following this, which they've already was the closed session, which was going to be for the members of Congress who had the security clearances to receive the reports from the task force. But talking about the RF stuff, they were saying that, to me, it kind of like first thing came to mind was like, radio controlled, unmanned drones, whatever, like that kind of stuff, or things like that. But then they also said that that perhaps like some of it might indicate that they're trying to jam our jam radar, like that kind of stuff, which you could possibly, I mean, that's a thing. So saying that you got these, to my thing is like, are they trying to I mean, you could have these things that it's some type of like unmanned drone that's designed for like radar spoofing. That's like, you know, it can shoot out basically radar radio signals, and then it, you know, it projects an image onto a radar, ghosts onto the thing. So I thought that was kind of neat when they talked about that. But then, yeah, it's I thought the hearing is neat. Like it's a cool.
It almost let out more. Yeah, like Braden said, it let out more than we were all thinking. You know,
right?
There's like I found this one quote very interesting, so I'm going to read it. It's from Scott Bray, which is the Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence.
Yep.
Quoted as saying, "There are a small handful of events in which there are flight characteristics or signature management that we can explain with the data we have available. Those are obviously the ones that are the most of interest to us." And then goes on later in the thing to say, what is it here? He says, it's not about finding alien spacecraft. He had to like add that in quotes. But at the same time, he says that in the cases of the objects with unexplainable propulsion, kind of like, you know, the Tic Tac, the gimbal, the ones we've talked about, Mr. Bray said that the U.S. is not aware of any potential adversaries with such technologies, at least that they're willing to admit. So like, but they see these things with this strange propulsion that seem to, if there was a human occupant, they'd be turned to mush by the G-force. So it's got to be some type of drone or technology we don't know about. And they're saying we don't know, at least publicly, that they're going to disclose of any technology that exists in any foreign adversaries. So whatever these things, however these things are flying, I mean, it's kind of like an easy way to get around it. Like, so if someone did have a drone like that, he's not going to tell us. But he's saying it's not an adversary. When
he said that, I think like that it went on a bit further, or that it might have been a different part, but they were talking about that, and they were talking about perhaps like there are, maybe not all of them again, but like a large number of them, like they could be, I mean, the important qualifier. There's a lot of qualifiers being thrown around during the committee meeting, and it's like with the data we have. So I think it's important to kind of say that it's like, they right off the bat, they showed a video of one of the reports, like a video evidence that they had gotten with a report that they had recently acquired, and it's just like a flash. It's just like something really quick.
Yeah,
boom.
the flyby video.
And they're like,
and it's like you can type that in YouTube, the flyby UFO video. It's so quick, of just like some sort of object zips past at unbelievable speed because it's going opposite speed of the jet, so it's even worse, and it just seconds.
Yeah, so they're saying, a lot of times they're like, that's all we have that, and then they have nothing else to whatever. So they're like, it could have been an atmospheric phenomenon, it could have been
alien
object, it could have been anything.
He basically threw up his hands. He's like, to paraphrase, he's basically like, we're just like you guys, like we see that shit, we don't know, like that's it, we have nothing else to go on. I did find it interesting that they did break down those triangle night vision videos.
Right. Yeah.
And I believe we broke those down the exact same way months ago, based off a YouTube video of another guy doing it.
I'm sure they watched that same YouTube video. Like, I know they did.
I'm sure they listened to our podcast and didn't give us credit. That's what happened.
Oh, absolutely.
God damn it. Where's my check, U.S. government?
He's like, I did a lot of research for this. I could have gone without the 10 or 15 minutes of that guy asking fucking Ronald Moultrie if he does cosplay because he likes science fiction. I was like,
that little joke was like, come on, dude, really?
I was like,
you don't necessarily dress up. What is that? Come on, dude.
Yeah, he's like, that wasn't convincing. So let's talk more about your science fiction interests. I was like, let's not.
Yeah, because he
UFOs.
He just said like he's like us. He likes sci-fi, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
and then they go on the cosplay route. Like, just because you like science fiction doesn't mean you're
I
dressing
thought
up
it was
like
funny
fucking...
that he mentioned that like specifically members of his family don't believe the moon landing happened. Like they still think that's science fiction. So I thought that was
Deep Singh from San Francisco. Threw us some $5 for some beer money.
Oh fuck yeah! Thanks, buddy.
Cheers, buddy. I don't have a beer tonight, but I will drink one in your honor.
How about that? The fucking Representative Gallagher, the guy from Wisconsin. I mean, he was tossing up. He was asking some fucking
throwing some heat.
He talked about Malmstrom, right?
He was bringing the heat. I was impressed. I actually kind of enjoyed it, even though he's a fucking Packers fan. I was like, all right, this guy's all right. He's coming on McAfee's show tomorrow. I'm excited.
To
Oh,
talk
cool.
about
He's
this?
Yeah,
Oh,
to
for
talk
sure.
about the UAPs. They're all about it.
Yeah.
We've like mentioned it, or we've talked about the Malmstrom event a couple of times. I'm pretty sure over the course of us.
The
some of our
Maelstrom Air
case
Force
Files.
Base.
Yeah,
Yeah,
where
we've talked
you
about it
had
before.
the alleged account of a UFO approaching a base and then or being visually sighted by multiple witnesses and then having nuclear warheads seemingly deactivated within the base itself, or having their launch capability impaired to some extent.
Right.
And so he was bringing that information up, which I was like, hey, that's cool, that's neat, and asking the two members of the task force, kind of, have you guys heard about this? Have you guys investigated this at all? Is this something you've investigated?
If that's real, there's no fucking way they haven't heard of it. Like, not a fucking chance.
Well, I would say, like, yeah, now that it's been brought to their attention, that's something that's kind of neat. It's like, yes, it's been brought to their attention.
If nuclear warheads were being deactivated and shit, like the entire every part of the fucking, even you in the fucking bottom of the boat in the Navy would have found out about that shit.
But that's assuming that there is good documentation of that happening. That if there's, like they said before,
you don't think they're
going
sending
into the
that
meeting-
right up the flagpole the minute it happens?
Oh yeah.
Like, there's no fucking way.
Yeah,
Nobody's sweeping that under the rug.
I
Not a
like that
chance.
the one guy asked the question. He goes, one concern that I have is that this task force may lean into only looking into ones that they can easily explain. And he goes, like, what assurances are you going to give the public that you're going to look at all of these things? And he's like, we want to look at all of them because we're looking at this from a national security standpoint now. So we want to figure out what all these things are now. So we're going to take an open-minded approach to all these things. We're looking at every kind of hypothesis or theory on these things, and we're going to look at all these things. So I like that answer where it's like, because I was kind of worried about that too. I was like, well, sure, they're only going to look at the ones with the Mylar balloons, right? And they're like, and they said that they're like, that's what we're working through is, categories. Like, no, we can say that's Mylar balloons, that's swamp gas, that's Venus and Gatorade, 100%. But they're going to look at all these videos. But again, the one issue is that some of them, it's just these quick, fleeting glance of a thing where it's like they have as much knowledge as just someone on, like, a member of the public.
Oh, they got to they have to bring in, for sure, they got to bring in Tom DeLonge and fucking Bobby Laser.
Buddy,
You need them.
Hey, you want to talk about propulsion? Bring in Bobby Laser. He knows all about those fucking things.
Hey, how about how hard do you think Corbell got that they name dropped him at the beginning?
Yeah.
Of that?
Megalithlically.
He was just at home like, oh yes, I made it.
Raging.
Yeah.
He's got another.
I will give. I think you can give some credit to Corbell and the
100%,
people
you have to.
Lou Elizondo. Like, you can give them credit for bringing these stuff up. Tom DeLonge and all them, kind of still keeping it in keeping it into the public eye, because you might not have had any of this stuff kind of come into a head. It's taken a while, that this has all kind of happened, but kind of keeping it in the long run. This is something that is like, fundamentally, this is kind of the transparency we should have had
For a while.
for so long.
Yeah.
ATIP was a completely secret program. Never saw anything about this. You spent $60 million. Like, why? What were you looking at? Where are the reports? All that kind of stuff. It's just that kind of, this is, and they said that in the committee meeting, they kind of talked about how this is the function of government oversight. This is what it should have, which is what it should be, is that you have publicly elected officials bringing the concerns of citizens to the front, and then, legislating the proper actions and protocols into existence to deal with this stuff. And I think this is it's important. So I do think the big UFO heads do deserve a little bit of credit.
Yeah. 100%. If you put in the time, regardless of what people say about, like, DeLonge and To the Stars, they did bring those videos public first.
Right.
And then a few years later, they're like, yeah, these videos are real and we don't know what they are. So like they did, if it would have turned out that they brought those videos and like, oh, these videos have been doctored or altered and these are not real and we're not going to acknowledge their existence, it would have been different. But they're like, no, they're actually, those are real events and we don't know what happened. We talked to one of the guys, we talked to Kevin Day on it, you know? So
I just think, yeah. And I think like the way they ran ATIP in the beginning, like back then still seems kind of shitty. So it's like, okay, so you guys put together this secret program, you contracted through one guy, one rich dude, and then you kind of took all your stuff and then you
Some
let him take it and then
weird
lock it
rich
up. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. And then you just kind of shut it down without even really doing anything. Like what, like we spent $60 million on what, where did that money go? That to me is more concerning than some other aspects of this. But like I enjoyed this type of transparency being put forth, that being like, okay, we have people who are in charge. They specifically asked, I liked a lot of the questions that were kind of just like, do you guys have everything that you need in order to do your job? Like one member of Congress was asking them, do you have all the clearances that you need? Are the other agencies that you are corroborating with, the other alphabets, the other, DIA, whatever, everybody,
Space Force,
DoD, Space Force, like, do you have channels with these people? And are you being, kind of asking them, like, is anybody not cooperating the way that they should be? And they're like, no, we got a weird working relationship with everybody. We've got everything. We found, I think they specifically mentioned, like, they're bringing in all kinds of experts, like a very, everybody, like Braden said, they're bringing in a lot of people and they're kind of studying it from every angle. I think they specifically mentioned like astrobiologists and physicists and, meteorologists,
theorists,
all these people. But yeah, I think the whole kind of this meeting was just a really good initial kind of setting up, being like, do you guys know what you're doing? And do you have the stuff that you need?
The other thing that I like, when I was kind of left with, that I was like humming and hawing in my head, is that, like, if these, they kind of like what Zell said, where they said, like, they're not aware of other technologies, other countries in possession of these kind of technologies that defy our kind of understanding of physics and stuff. If they kind of suss out that these aren't, would they still even say that they're extraterrestrial? Because for me, I was kind of thinking that leaves I don't think they would, because they don't know for sure. If they don't know for sure, it's easier for them to just say, well, hey, we don't know.
We don't know.
Right? And just leave it at that. But then, honestly, when we hear in the future and in these congressional meetings where they say that, we're like, this, we don't know. To me, that's that's pretty big. Like, to even just say that with those, like, now that they're looking into these things, those are the ones where you want to look at then in kind of with more scrutiny, where you're like, okay, well, fuck, even our government with this task force and, everything at their beck and call doesn't know what these things are, then those are the ones I'd be most interested in.
I mean, I guess the implications of admitting that are pretty big, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in the committee, though, they also said, like, well, I think they were asked, like, have you recovered any extraterrestrial craft? And they said no, in the simplest terms. They're like, we do not possess any otherworldly craft, devices, creatures, and or propulsion systems that have been left and or crashed on the planet.
Well,
pretty much.
The people in that room are aware of.
Until they went to the back room in the secret committee and they went,
What do you think? What do you think they had in the back room?
a couple grays.
Check this shit out, son.
Couple grays in the back.
Good work. You didn't give us away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to the club, boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's another important part where they were talking about a lot of these. They said a number of these objects, like, they're like, we can explain a lot of these that seemingly are strange. They're like, we can, a lot of these reports, like, we can explain them. We can't explain them in the open session because we don't want other countries that are potential adversaries to know how we know what we know. They're saying, certain types of sensors and they're kinds of like reconnaissance abilities. Like, you don't want anybody. And I think we talked about that one, or
we've talked about that a few times, about, like, how we know stuff. We wouldn't want to let our adversaries know how we know, because then they know how we know.
Okay.
So they're going to try and counter it.
They
with a
know that we know that they know that we know.
But
Exactly.
see, but
All right.
and again, the downside for me for that is that also kind of leaves the door open in my mind of that we know what all these things are, but we don't even want to say that we like, if we like, we don't want to say because we know Russia and China has this tech, and we know, but we don't want them to know that we know. So it's like this is
That
all a
we
big
know that they know that we know.
facade, right? Like that's what I kind of worry about, is that it's like we're not giving any information, and this is just to further kind of, you know, make it seem like we don't know what they have and what they're capable of. Because, you know, it's like Annie Jacobson proposed that Russia is light years ahead in aerospace engineering after Operation Osavayakim, and that
Is that the girl who wrote the book?
Yeah, and that was the girl, and like the Roswell crash was actually a craft full of Russians. Like it was a Russian craft.
children or something. Right?
Irradiated Russian
Yeah.
mutant kids,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, they just and my guess is they drove it too fast, hit some G forces, and all turned into mashed potatoes and crashed into Roswell.
They launched it off a sub off the coast of like San Francisco. I think
No,
that's-
a spaceship filled with kids crashed. You don't
Yeah.
fucking say.
Yeah, no surprise here.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that is going to be like they said, they're still technically a little in the early days of this task force. Like it's just been formed. They just named the head of it just a few days ago before this meeting. And I thought it was there's some people out there that are kind of being like, you know, why now? Why are they doing this meeting now? You've got all this other stuff going on in the world. You've got war in Ukraine. You've got food shortages. You've got all this crap, you know, and it could seemingly to some people be interpreted as they're trying to bury this in the news or stuff like this. And the simplest answer is like this meeting was scheduled like a year ago.
Yeah.
They legislated the task force into existence. They gave it 5 months. It's back there in the, like I remember reading in the committee notes, like the actual deadline. They're like, you got 5 months from here to give us a report about what's going on and the thing. Because I think that when they brought the task force in, they said they have to give them like an annual report, and then they have to also like have like 2 semi-annual reports. So twice a year they're supposed to report their findings to the Senate Intelligence Select Committee or whatever. So, but it's gonna be neat if they keep having these open ones, because then this will be kind of neat. I mean, every year you'll have something, you know, that this will be kind of neat to kind of see how it shapes up. Like I think it's fascinating that it's just kind of become, you know, this is just a part of it now. This is just kind of a normal open thing, or it's become kind of almost mundane.
It's more like it's more in the pop culture now. It's like, you know,
it's more out in the open. Like they said, it's time to bring this kind of program like out of the shadows. It's not a Project Blue Book. It's not.
And
Grudge.
they said,
it's not whatever.
they're like this, like what we're talking about here is a huge interest to the public in our country. Like, yeah. And it is like, it's in pop culture, media, it's everything. Everyone's interested in it. So it's cool that, you know, with time now, we're going to see more and more and more UFO reports. Like, you think 400 is surprising. I can't wait for the next one where we you know, these reports are through the roof, right? And I'm sure, again, you know, it's going to be 90% Mylar balloons, but the 10% that they don't know, right?
I thought it was, and I thought it was also kind of funny. They brought up the idea of having like a cross like between like a military and civilian like report, because like, do you have any channels for civilian reports? And I know the guy is he's like no, why?
He's like why would we? I pay the $50 a month for my MUFON subscription so I can look through the database just like everyone else.
But it's like there's no way they'd be able to do it. And I think they kind of brought that up too. They're like, we don't have the resources to field the number of UFO reports that you would get, which are a large majority are anecdotal, experiential kind of reports that people are like, I saw something. And so having that, because that's kind of like, I feel like that was one of Blue Book's kind of one of Blue Book's criticisms, was like, it was basically Hynek driving around the country in a beat up old shitty government car chasing down UFO reports. And he's like, it's just me. It's just me going out and getting these reports. I get there like 3 days late. And then, you know, I got Farmer Bob out here saying he saw something weird and up in the air, like while he was drinking his homemade moonshine. Like I got to write all this down and then I got to submit this. So it's neat that it's like, this is an actual task force. They've got actual people and they've got the resources that are needed. They're really hammering out a standardized protocol of reporting across organizations.
Now, on the topic of reporting, we got a question in the chat from Uncle Slam. He says, apparently aviators now have instructions on their knee boards for reporting UAPs. Do y'all think that will make a difference? Now, I'm going to say I think it will in the long run, but the difficult thing is there's, you have to change the culture. And the culture for so long, it's been stigmatized. And, reporting these things is risking your career or being ridiculed, right? And I think it's going to be a slow transition because those things are like, it's government. You think the first guy's going to want to be like, if I report this, am I really not going to be ridiculed? Am I really is this not going to look bad for me? Are they just going to collect it? So I think
they got to incentivize it.
Well, I think for the first while, it's going to be slower while they change the culture of making it okay to report these things, especially when you grasp it from like a national security, like we want to know what these national security standpoint, because we want to know what these things are and we want to study them just in case. So like, forget what we've been told in the past. We understand that this was a Sigma and this was a real thing. That's out the window. We need to know these things and we need to know when you see them or you think you see them.
One of the other interesting points one of the congressmen brought up was the idea of having to field false reports, like how they should be dealing with those. And they were talking about how he's like, is there a thing in place for some type of reprimand or something that's going to happen that people like field these false reports? And they had actually, I guess, at some point the task force in their formation like kind of talked about it, like trying to figure out, like they're like, it is a consideration of ours, like there could be hostile countries, forces, whatever, trying to inject into false reports. Like this could possibly be happen. And the Congress is like, well, can you guys punish them? Or like, is there going to be any sort of punishment or any, can you do anything? And the guy was like, no, what would we do? Like, he's just kind of, he's like, he's like,
no
you guys
screen
would have
time
to,
for 2 weeks.
yeah. He's like, you guys would
Go to
have to
your
give us
room.
the power to punish people for making false reports. Like, we don't have that. We don't have that authority. I thought that was kind of funny. It's like, what? Like, he's pretty goofy. All of it seems pretty. It seems shaping up nicely.
It seems like it's a step in the right direction, in my opinion. From all the stuff you got in the past, it's always ridiculed. Now it's like, no, that there is some events that we don't understand the propulsion. We don't think it's we're not going to tell us that it's adversaries. They're saying no adversaries we know of have technology like this. So it makes it. It's those type of sentences, like those statements that lead to wonder, like, okay, if it's not adversaries, it's obviously aliens. There's no other way around it, right? In my opinion,
Has to be.
it's aliens.
I mean, you have atmospheric phenomenon, which could be it could be
Sounds like a
weather. There are weather events.
Okay, flat Earth.
All right, CIA. We've heard it all before.
It's a cloud, space cloud.
Ball lightning, man, plasma currents, like an electromagnetic.
Ball lightning doesn't move fast though.
How do you know? You ever seen ball lightning?
Well, I've read all the accounts, and as far as I know,
Ball
lightning just floats in the sky.
We got another question in the chat from Ken Harrington.
It's fast ball lightning.
Is this really going to change anything, or is it a smoke screen? If anything, I think this is slowly clearing the smoke screen. I think it's, if we slowly get some sort of system in place where these can be reported and then studied, I mean, I think that will change things, because forever, we have friends that are pilots who say, like, you don't report it. You don't. Right. And if there's an avenue that makes that okay, then I think we'll see it. I don't think it's going to be tomorrow everything's changed, but I think over time we're going to see
Slow drip.
Yeah, that's they did mention that they do have a in terms of, like I said, they didn't really have an open line for civilian, but they did say that they're cooperating with the FAA. So they
Hey,
do have the FAA.
there is
so
an
the
open
FAA
line for civilians. What are you talking about, Dan? They
Yell
said
not
there's an
to
open.
these.
There's an
Not
open
to-
line for. Yes, there is, Dan. It's 1-833-703-0424.
Fuck you, call
Sunday-
us.
Sunday night, 6:30. You can
Right.
call us and tell us all about it.
Any story you want.
Any story you want. We will take on what the United States government can't, and that's reporting UFOs. You can report them to us.
And then they should ship a proportional amount of tax dollars our way.
Yeah, and we will use our massive resources that we have at our disposal to try and identify that UFO that you have seen.
We'll crack the case before we're done here, I think.
But no, they did say that they're working with the FAA as well. So I would also hope that they are going to, while destigmatizing this stuff in relation to military pilots, civilian pilots as well, because I think that's something that's important.
Oh yeah.
So
Well,
if
what's that?
if
The
they're-
Japanese one with the airliner, like that was
Right.
a great. It's insane one.
That was a
Right.
massive UFO.
So if they're
Massive.
having the FAA reports as well and being like, hey, look, civilian pilots, commercial airline pilots and that stuff, like if you're seeing something and report it to FAA, it's going to get to us, and then they can bend the resource, they can allocate the resources in order to investigate these things. So I think that's important as well. So it's just, the whole thing was, they were saying that, like, we want this to be driven by our investigation into these events, and this phenomenon wants to be as data driven as possible, and we need as much as we can get. So we're doing that. We're establishing those as reliable data and as much data as we can get, and they seem to be doing that. That's
Boom. Yeah, super cool. It's the first time since, what was it, 1966? That must have been like, who was president? Ford? Reagan? Ford?
Reagan.
Ford?
Reagan.
Is that the Condon Committee?
Anyways, it was like 66 was the last time this happened.
Condon
So
report?
over 50 years ago. We're getting it now in our time, so we thought we had to touch on this topic quickly, immediately after this came out. We're gonna keep our ears there. Maybe we can. Dan's coming back to the States, and he lives close to DC.
I could show up. I could have went to that if I were in the States.
Yeah. So don't you have some neighbors that are like high up, like some big senators or something? You could just get on the
His
podcast.
dad's
Yeah.
a frog man. He can just
Dude, his
walk
dad
right
was
in.
SEAL Team 6 or whatever, wasn't
This
it?
is
Yeah.
true. It turns out Jesse Ventura was not a Navy SEAL.
Yeah, they'll
Didn't
just
make
pull
it.
me into the closed session. They'll just be like, "Yeah, you wearing that? Yeah, you with the hat." In.
So
Yeah.
when Dan gets back,
Is that legendary Bud Works kid? Get him in here. Give him a pass.
So yeah, we're living in interesting times, and I'm excited
Yeah.
to see more of this. What's going
Yeah,
on?
it's and we're gonna cover it when these things pop off, these congressional hearings. There's gonna be more in the future and stuff. We'll probably cover them similar to this one, just kind of review what's said in them, takeaways and whatnot, and we'll go from there. But it's exciting times for sure.
Oh yeah. All right, it was a late night record, last minute. I had to get it in though, so I'm pretty sure that is it. I'm sure more stuff will come trickling out as the weeks and months kind of go on after this, but we'll keep our ears down.
Yep.
Maybe we'll try and get one of these
Eyes
motherfuckers on the show.
Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Alien Theorist Podcast. You can find us on social media anywhere, Alien Theorists, or Alien Theorist Theorizing. Easy to find. And as we always say at the end of these things, keep those eyes on the skies.
Peace.